MicroStrategy just made a huge announcement that nobody is paying attention to. They filed with the SEC to raise another $44 billion to smash by, at least at today's prices, around 600,000 more Bitcoin. This would take MicroStrategy to around 1.3 million Bitcoin. That's nearly 7% of the total Bitcoin supply locked up in the hands of one company. We all think that we have a lot more time left to accumulate Bitcoin, but our chances, your chances to buy one full Bitcoin could be disappearing faster than you think. It is getting crazy out here, guys. Remember, 21 million Bitcoin has been mined. We have millions of Bitcoins coming through Wall Street, Bitcoin treasury companies. The majority of Bitcoin is held in self-custody. The point remains the same as always. There's not that much Bitcoin to go around. Now, before I get into this news, I will break it all down, but we saw this happen in the past. Like 44 billion is obviously a huge number. We all wish we could have 44 billion to smash by Bitcoin, right? But the real interesting thing is we've already seen something like this happen from strategy, from Michael Saylor. In October of 2024, MSTR only had around 190,000 Bitcoin. And then they announced a similar plan to raise $42 billion to buy Bitcoin over a 2 to 3 year period. He ended up completing that $42 billion buy in under 12 weeks. In about 3 months, he not only raised the money, but he bought that Bitcoin, literally doubling the company's Bitcoin holdings in a matter of weeks. We also saw the Bitcoin price go from 60K to about 126K in the next few months that followed. So the real question is, actually, my real question is Saylor single-handedly saving us, pulling us out of this bear market? And is history repeating itself right as we're watching it, right before our eyes? It's absolutely nuts. The amount of interest that strategy has gotten from the STRC product, this might be the new infinite bid, not just from Wall Street, but literally just people wanting that 11.5% interest payments or dividend payments from STRC. It's absolutely nuts. But let me get into this story here, and I'll break down some of the math for you and really highlight just what he's doing. It's nuts. Like I can't emphasize enough just how insane Saylor's moves are. Like, he can't keep getting away with this, guys. He literally can't be the only one buying Bitcoin, but as of now, it seems like he is. That's why I keep saying, I think Saylor's going to single-handedly, by all of his might, all of his will, pull us out of a shorter bear market. I know Nico's looking at me like, not going to happen, not going to happen. But hey, I don't need your bearishness right now. Let's get through the numbers, and then you can get bearish. Nico's dejected. Okay, here we go. So he announces yesterday, and it goes, strategy announces new $21 billion STRC ATM program and new $21 billion MSTR ATM program. So for $42 billion. And I have a good breakdown here from Crypto Briefing, which, what he posted was just the SEC filing. It's boring. You don't want to see that. So strategy files to raise up to $44 billion via ongoing share sales to fund Bitcoin purchases. Of course, the company plans to use this proceeds for general corporate purposes, including Bitcoin purchases, working capital, and paying dividends on preferred stock. So obviously, you could make the assumption that even if he raises $44 billion, and it wouldn't be crazy if they raise more money than $44 billion, as we've seen happen time and time again with strategy. Saylor announces a raise. It is oversupplied. More people want in. The number could be bigger than $44 billion, but we're going to take the $44 billion number. And with that number, he's most likely not going to buy $44 billion of Bitcoin, but you could guess that or speculate that the majority of that $44 billion is just going to be to buy Bitcoin. So a huge buy is coming. Now, obviously, this was just filed with the SEC. We don't know when the raise is going to happen. But again, as I mentioned in the beginning, if history repeats itself, this could happen within months. He could smash by double his holdings within months. What is that going to do with the current price action of Bitcoin, with the current amount of Bitcoin on exchanges, with the fact that there are no real sellers anymore? Everyone's wondering who's selling all this Bitcoin. You're literally selling it to Saylor at this point. It's Saylor and Larry Fink, and also maybe, Jamie Dimon at this point. So you shouldn't be selling your Bitcoin currently. Anyways, going further, here's where the numbers come in. They filed with the SEC to raise capital. Like I said, $21 billion in the common stock sales, up to $21 billion in variable rate Series A perpetual stretch preferred stock or STRC, and up to $2.1 billion in 8% Series A perpetual strike preferred stock, so STRK. Remember, Saylor has, at this point, I've lost count. I think it's like 5 different strategy products, obviously tapping into 5 different capital markets. But it seems like the STRC ticker, the stretch product from strategy, it is, I think, the strategy iPhone moment. It is the one that is just catching on. People really like this product. And it seems like Saylor's just going to have an unlimited money printer at this point, an infinite money glitch. This could be the underlying infinite bid here, is if capital markets think that stretch is the winner and Bitcoin's going to go up, this could keep going. He could just rinse and repeat this for forever. And I know we were joking, and then we have been joking on the show that for a while there, it seemed like Saylor's buys were getting smaller and smaller. And it was like, is he running out of capital? Excuse me. Is he running out of people that are interested in these products? And then Stretch comes out and it just blows the door out of the water, and more capital than ever, I think, is finding its way to Stretch, which is just absolutely insane and interesting to watch. So going further, of course, they're going to be buying Bitcoin. They're going to use some of that money for corporate needs. Nothing's changing here. I think what we have learned in the last couple of weeks is that strategy is totally market tested. I think they're totally not only insulated, but bulletproof at this point. We've said it for a while on the show. If you are in the market for a Bitcoin treasury company, I think most people are only looking at strategy at this point. They're holding up their MSTR stock. It's not looking as bad as it did a couple of weeks ago. It seemed to have bounced off that 150 per share range. If the MSTR stock comes back, if the price continues its upward trend, this could be a whole different ball game. It could be a totally different ball game. Now, here's where it gets super interesting. I'm going to go over to the strategy.com dashboard. This is where we can see their current reserves, how much Bitcoin they currently have, what their market cap is for strategy. This is where the numbers are just absolutely nuts. I think Saylor is also feeling the FOMO right now. We've said it on the show a few times. Like, what does Saylor know? I think he's had some backroom conversations, some backroom meetings, and he knows what is coming down the pipeline. Hence why he's almost doing panic buys like we all do when it usually happens when you're new to Bitcoin. You get into Bitcoin, you put a little capital in, then you finally clicks what Bitcoin is, and you get this FOMO, and you're like, I need to literally sell all of my shares, sell everything I have to get into Bitcoin. Now, I think Saylor already sold all his shares. Well, actually, that's not true, because if you've seen his house and his interviews, he's got some really nice chairs. So he's still got some capital in his, South Beach mansion that he could probably sell if he really needed to. But he's doing this on a corporate level. He's doing this from the strategy business level. And this is where the numbers are nuts. So again, here we go. Bitcoin reserves. He currently has about, and this has been fluctuating this morning with the price movement. It was like 52.3 billion. Currently it's at 52.9 billion. And of course owns 762,099 Bitcoin, 762,099. And he plans to raise 44 billion. If this happens within the next couple of months and Bitcoin doesn't explode, that's, about what, 80% of his Bitcoin reserves currently with that 44 billion. That's about adding somewhere north of 600,000 more coins. I think the math I did this morning at a lower price was about 628,000 coins to add. So we'll do a rough 600K Bitcoin when this capital raise happens that he will add to the strategy Bitcoin treasury. That's a rough 1.3 million Bitcoin under strategy, under one company, one man, one billionaire owning 1.3 million Bitcoin. Now, the math does get a little interesting if you start to look at where the price of Bitcoin might go and how long, this process might take. Even if this takes longer than the next 3 months, and even if Bitcoin goes up to like $200,000 per coin, I think it's pretty safe to say that he will get to 1 million Bitcoin under strategy, holding in their treasury very, very soon. So shouts out to Roaring Ragnar. He did the math for me. So, I'm outsourcing my math to a Twitter post. So you can fact check this, but you know me, I'm not that good at math. So math is not my strong suit. But anyways, he goes, Strategy's remaining capital raising capacity is now $50 billion, enough to reach 1 million Bitcoin. That's an additional 500,000 Bitcoin at 100K, 400,000 Bitcoin at $125,000, or 333,333 Bitcoin at 150K, or about 250,000 Bitcoin at 200K. Even if Bitcoin goes to 200K overnight, by the end of the year, which I think at this point is a long shot, I'm as bullish as anyone, but 200K within 9 months or something like that, that's even too bullish for me to say. But as long as Bitcoin is under 200K and this capital raise happens within a relatively short period of time, Saylor will at minimum own 1 million Bitcoin, most likely by the end of the year. Now, we did see some Polymarket odds come in, and I think these odds are even higher. So Bitcoin Mag tweeted yesterday. Yeah, yesterday in the evening, goes, now there's a 96% chance that Michael Saylor's strategy will hold over 800,000 Bitcoin on its balance sheet end of year, according to Polymarket. I did try to look on the Polymarket site to find, the odds on this, but I couldn't find the exact one. So if it's fake news, I'm gonna have to blame my boy Nick over there. But but I think the odds of Saylor acquiring 1 million Bitcoin by the end of this year is higher than 96% at this point. I think it's like all but confirmed. Again, if this capital raise of $44 billion, that's 80% of the Bitcoin treasury that they currently hold in dollar terms. I think he's going to get to 1 million Bitcoin by the end of this year, which really starts to highlight where we currently are. Yes, we've all been following and waiting patiently, or maybe some of us not so patient, for the mother of all supply shocks to happen. I think it's starting to take form here. Now, obviously, I can hear some of you guys. I'm not seeing you in the chat right now, but I can hear the disgruntled Bitcoiner, the hardcore Bitcoiner, it's only real Bitcoin if you're custodying that Bitcoin. You could argue potentially that, this is all paper Bitcoin. They're not actually buying Bitcoin. But from all of the data, on-chain data that I've seen, they are buying this Bitcoin. It's just going through Coinbase custody or Coinbase Prime custody. So, in theory, they do own that Bitcoin. On a more technical, practical level, or maybe ideological level, you could say they don't actually own that Bitcoin, but they're buying the Bitcoin. That's as far as I can tell. Obviously, very famously, Saylor said, proof of reserves, they're not going to do it. It's dangerous, etc. We don't really know the reasons why. He made his case, but we've seen other big Bitcoin companies do proof of reserves. But this is a, trust but verify moment. I think he's buying the Bitcoin. I don't think he's going to slay his golden goose where he can literally just infinite money glitch, raise money, buy more Bitcoin, literally use other people's money so that he can buy Bitcoin, and then he just gives you a little bit of the returns, but they hold the Bitcoin. It's a genius play here. Saylor's literally using the TradFi system, the TradFi playbooks on Bitcoin, and it's absolutely taking over the world. Yes, it's still early, but the amount of Bitcoin that Saylor can potentially have by the end of this year, if all things kind of remain the same, he might own more Bitcoin than all of the ETFs in general. And the ETFs currently, I don't know if you guys follow Eric Balkunis, the senior ETF analyst on Bloomberg, But the Bitcoin ETFs are holding up very, very well right now. The inflows are good. Currently, or he tweeted this morning that Bitcoin is in the top % of all ETFs, period. So institutional capital is looking at Bitcoin. Now, again, you could argue that the ETFs aren't actually buying Bitcoin. I don't necessarily think that that's the case. But if things kind of remain where they're going in the trajectory that they're going, yes, the combined ETFs will have more Bitcoin than Saylor by the end of the year. But Saylor himself, if he gets to that 1.3 million Bitcoin under strategy in their corporate treasury, that's a significant chunk of this 1.6 million Bitcoin that are in ETFs. And this also has exchanges on it. Dude, it's like the Breaking Bad meme at this point. Like, Saylor literally cannot keep getting away with this. It's insane how he's able to raise this much capital. I obviously think that Saylor is doing everything from a certain Bitcoin principle. I don't think he's doing anything to really defraud people that are holding strategy. So I am on Team Saylor at this point, though it does bring up a lot of conversations about the, you know, centralization of holdings amongst certain entities, which is maybe something we'll talk about on the show right now. But this amount of capital and this amount of accumulation from Saylor, we haven't seen this in the past. This is new. Even though he's doing the same playbooks, it's totally a wild card. It's a totally new variable to where we currently are in Bitcoin's growth. And it's just like, man, you know, it's literally just a hat tip to Saylor. Like, you know, I know me and Nico joke about this on the show all the time. It's like, I wish we could just raise billions of dollars to buy Bitcoin from a corporate level or even an individual level. He is continuing to put on a masterclass right now. And of course, you can make, you know, you could critique him depending on what your ideological view is in Bitcoin, how hardcore you are. You could critique Saylor on his strategy. But if he is able to acquire 1.3 million Bitcoin in the face of some of the exchanges that been in Bitcoin for so long, he just comes in and really, I don't want to say necessarily corners the market, because that's kind of like a derogatory framing to it. But it's really starting to look like a few things might play out in the future. One, Saylor is going to make a run for the richest man in the world, and strategy is making a run for being one of the most profitable or largest market caps in the world. I saw that they passed Oracle this morning on market cap, which is like insane. Literally, you know, a business analytics company that no one really knows. It's got some government contracts to make some software, goes in, buys Bitcoin, and just pass I think Larry Ellison's still the second richest man in the world's company. I think once Bitcoin starts making a run, Saylor is going to really start to climb the, you know, richest man in the world ladder. This is insane.
Look,
yeah, Nico, let's get the bearish take here.
It's not a bearish take, man. It's that, like, right now, you know, I would say Bitcoin is at a crossroads. Bitcoin's been at a crossroads many times in its history, right? And really, you know, the question on everybody's minds is Bitcoin really ready to take it up a notch, to go to the next level, right? And Saylor, you know, literally is betting the house on that, right? He's below his average price. I think his average price is like 72, 73 around there.
I don't remember, but he's been dollar cost averaging at $1 billion. So yeah, I think he's good.
He's below his, you know, his average accumulation price. You know, he started buying Bitcoin in 21. So obviously, you know, talk about conviction. It's done extremely well for his stock, for his company. But the reality is that he is below his average purchase price. Now, obviously, Saylor has a long time horizon. So he, you know, none of this really affects him, so to speak. But he is really going all in, like all in, completely all in. Not only is strategy's future tied into the future price appreciation of Bitcoin, but Stretch, one of the most popular products he's offering right now, is also completely tied into the fact that Bitcoin has to appreciate by 20 to 30% for the next 10 to 15 years for the Stretch product to even be viable, right? Offering that 11%, roughly 11% yield on a yearly basis. So when Saylor is, Saylor is not only talking the talk, he's walking the walk. Like, he is betting his entire company's future. I would say his reputation, his legacy on this bet, right? And talk about conviction. This is conviction in 4K right in front of your face. Now, here's the thing, everybody. This isn't too crazy in terms of approaching it from a Bitcoin lens, because every Bitcoiner at one point or the other, at least the classes that me and Opti were part of, you end up 100% or 110% or 120% into Bitcoin. Like, your conviction is bulletproof in that sense. The only difference here is the magnitude of the bet, right? The publicity of the bet, the fact that this bet has to do with the traditional markets. That's really the only fundamental difference between what Michael Saylor is doing and what the rest of us did for many, many years before Wall Street got into Bitcoin, which is a relatively new phenomenon, right? The ETF was approved in January of 2024, and Saylor's Bitcoin strategy really only started in 2021, right? He made his famous announcement at the Bitcoin 2021 conference here in Miami, right? But fundamentally, he's doing exactly the same thing that the rest of us did, right? Which is we went all in. Obviously, Saylor has the ability and the experience to leverage the traditional financial markets, again, to raise capital to continue to buy more Bitcoin. Some people call it, an attack on the dollar, an attack on the system. You can call it whatever you want. A speculative attack. You can call it whatever you want. But the fact is, this is a matter of fact. This is not an opinion. This is not just my perspective. Is he's leveraging the capital markets to raise more money to buy more Bitcoin. And the capital markets are going along with it. The capital markets are indicating that, hey, listen, we like Saylor's strategy. I think it's working. And that's the only reason he's able to continue to raise money to continue to buy more Bitcoin. Now, here's the thing. All of this will work as long as Bitcoin's price continues to appreciate. And I think that's the question, right? And this is where your own personal conviction, comes into the equation, right? Do you believe that Bitcoin could be at 500K by 2030? Can you believe that Bitcoin can get into the $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 levels? Is that possible? Can you conceive of that future? And I would say, yes, I can conceive of that future, but it's still, one thing is conceiving of that future and one thing is actually experiencing that future. Because even though we all knew that 100K Bitcoin was coming, when Bitcoin hit 100K, it still felt, very special, right? It still felt slightly euphoric, right? It still felt like, oh my God, like we actually achieved something. Because, you can have the greatest theory on earth, but if the markets don't, if the markets don't show that, then it's just a theory. At the end of the day, one thing is talking about absolute scarcity. One thing is talking about Bitcoin's total addressable market cap. What is it, like 400 trillion? One thing is throwing out all these price predictions. One thing is reading Hal Finney's famous post on on the Bitcoin talk forums, talking about $10 million Bitcoin. And the other thing is Bitcoin actually achieving those prices, Bitcoin actually reaching those levels, right? So I think Bitcoin right now is at a crossroads. It really fundamentally is. And what I feel about this market, as I've been telling you guys for months now, is that really for the first time, I feel uncertainty in the markets, right? We rode this wave of Bitcoin was this sure thing. It was 100% guaranteed to win. This thing was going to go to $500,000 per coin. We got the first Bitcoin president elected. All of that was happening. I remember it. Like, it was all happening. It was guaranteed. And then, this current Bitcoin cycle didn't perform to a lot of people's expectations. And I think that let a lot of people down. It definitely wiped out a lot of the tourists. But as any other good Bitcoiner would do, instead of Saylor capitulating, do you guys remember the conversations that you had with your parents, your family and friends and whatever, when you first got into Bitcoin? You got absolutely wrecked. You're down 50% on your position, 60% on your position, 70% on your position. And then what happened? Right? You got those calls and you got those texts from your parents, your friends, they're like, are you okay? This Bitcoin thing is stupid. But what do? You stuck to your conviction and then you got vindicated. Right? So this next cycle is really going to be a different cycle. It really, really is, because Saylor is going to be vindicated on the world stage. Saylor is going to be vindicated to Wall Street. He is setting himself up to be literally one of the richest men on the planet. He's setting strategy to be one of the largest companies by market cap on planet Earth if the Bitcoin theory plays out. Strategy is not just a small software company anymore. It is competing with the likes of Google, with the likes of Meta, with the likes of Tesla. That is the leagues that Strategy is positioning itself to be in, right? The only question, again, I continue to harp and going back to this. The only question is Bitcoin going to perform? Is Bitcoin really going to get to those new highs? Can Bitcoin get to those new highs? Is there enough capital going into Bitcoin for it to catapult into these new price levels? That is the question. That is the question that everybody's thinking. That's the million sat question. If people knew the answer to this question, Strategy's stock price would already be at $1,000 plus, right? That's the reality. But this is Saylor's bet. But remember, this is a bet that you made yourself as an individual Bitcoiner when you got in. The only difference is that Saylor is able to raise a lot more capital than you. That's the only fundamental difference. But first principles, basics. He's doing the exact same thing that the rest of us have been doing for years. It just gets a lot more coverage, gets a lot more press coverage, because these are billions of dollars at stake. And man, oh man, is he putting his entire company on the line. His legacy. He's either going to go down or this guy's going to become a legend in the financial markets, for the next 100 years. Right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
There's no in between. There's no in between. And it kind of reminds me of...
It reminds me of his prediction. It's either going to millions or zero. I'm either going down to hero, I'm going down to zero.
It totally is. And it kind of reminds me of, and again, a totally different industry, like a totally different entrepreneur, totally different business. But it reminds me of, Elon's early days in SpaceX, right? It's very famous.
Yeah, what's
right?
the famous quote we always say?
Yeah, but like Elon's quote is like basically like starting a company is like eating glass and like jumping into the abyss. But put that aside, like the early days of SpaceX were crazy. So essentially, he took all the money that he made from PayPal and he invested it into Tesla and he invested into SpaceX. Right, that's what Elon Musk did in the early days. But big but, the first 2 SpaceX rockets blew up. And if the third rocket blew up, essentially he would have been bankrupt. He would have gone completely out of business. The third rocket did not blow up. And SpaceX right now, by market caps, one of, it's the, space company. There is no competition. So again, fortune favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold, and this is a very bold bet by Michael Saylor, and it all really depends on Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin going to live up to what we think it's all going to live up to?
Dude, is that really an if though?
I mean,
Nico, are you that bearish?
That's the question. No. I'm trying to
I know you can't believe that. I know that's a rhetorical tool.
I'm trying to be neutral here.
Dude, we're not neutral,
of
bro.
Of course we're not neutral, but
we're bullish Bitcoin.
But I'm trying to like lay out the groundwork and like just show you guys basically like, look, like this is what's at stake. This is the big bet. This is the big bet that Michael Saylor is making. This is what's at stake. We've believed, right? But it's a lot easier for us to say that, bro. We got in 2016, 2017.
Yeah, but you don't think Bitcoin's over.
The price is at a couple $1,000s per coin. Like now it's at $70,000 per coin.
Guys, hold on. Nico's just being a politician here because I know he doesn't think Bitcoin is not going up.
What do you mean?
Your if is the question that Bitcoin isn't going to continue to go up. Like I know that you believe it's going up.
Of course, I believe.
Okay, all right. That's the debate.
I couldn't run simply Bitcoin, right? We couldn't bait.
I get that.
Like
on the short term, but long term, that's our thesis that Bitcoin's going up.
It has to.
That's what I'm saying.
The success of Bitcoin is binary. Bro.
Okay, so it's not that big of an if. I guess it is an if.
Of course, it's a big if. Of course, it's a big if. Like, of course, it's a big if. Guys, if this was a sure thing, the price of Bitcoin would already be at $1 million per coin. Yeah, and Saylor actually even said this, like he was like on a podcast or he was on stage or something like that, and he was talking about this specifically. He said, he's like, look, by the time the bankers tell you to buy Bitcoin, it's going to be at $10 million per coin. That's what he said.
True.
You are taking a risk right now when you're buying Bitcoin. But that risk, exactly, for us it's not a risk because we're completely bought in. We understand the fundamentals, we understand the theory, but again, it's a fantastic from a risk adjusted return perspective. Right now, it's a lot less risky than when Bitcoin was $1,000 per coin, right? Back then, it was complete Wild West territory. It's still Wild West territory, in my opinion. Like, you still have crazy volatility, but the volatility represents opportunity, right? So listen, Michael Saylor is betting the house, his company, his legacy, his reputation, all on the future price appreciation of Bitcoin. And what should that tell you? That tells you that this man is 100% convinced that Bitcoin is going to be $500,000 per coin. This man is 100% convinced that Bitcoin is going to be millions of dollars per coin. He's 100% convinced of that. And he's willing to stake his entire company on that fact, right? So, of course, Opti and I completely believe that as well.
Well, while you were saying, I was going to say, we literally did the same thing. We just don't take other people's money.
But these are orders of magnitude.
That's true.
Bigger.
Yeah, we're peanuts.
Than what the individuals did in the early days of Bitcoin, and that's really what I got to say about that.
You're true. I agree. It's just maybe I'm doing the chat's bidding. I'm like, Nico, dude. Guys, Nico believes it's going up. He's just being a conservative CEO here. He's being a politician on air.
I'm not being a conservative CEO, bro. I'm just laying out the facts. These are the facts, bro. Like, these are the facts. My
facts or your facts?
No,
I'm just trolling.
These are the facts, bro. Like, the facts is that, like, look, like, guys, however which way you want to interpret this, however which way you want to see this, this is the reality, ladies and gentlemen. This is the reality. The reality is, does Bitcoin have it in it for it to go to these new highs? If it does, Michael Saylor is going to be one of the richest men on earth. If it does, you have the opportunity to be a millionaire today for $69,150. $69,150 will make you a millionaire today, right? That's the thesis. That's the basic thesis. So how long is that going to take? Who knows? Is it going to happen in the next 5 years? Who knows? Is it going to happen in the next 10 years? Probably. So big balls, huge balls.
Giga Chad balls.
Conviction. Cojones, bro. Cojones. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not a stock guy. But you know,
strategy or MSTR is going to like $500.
Strategy does look very appealing. I'll be honest with you. Like with the amount of Bitcoin that they're accumulating, bro, like we're not a treasury company channel whatsoever, but like with what they're doing, bro, like holy shit. That's what I got to say.
I'd agree.
Anyways, guys, we're going to start the show. We have tons to cover. We have Svetski joining us in a little bit. So it's going to be a hell of a show, guys. Stay tuned in. We still have tons to cover. We're going to be right back in just a bit. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded, non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo, and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on StampSeed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the numbers, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, StampSeed. Ladies and gentlemen, don't write down your seed words on paper. Stamp them into titanium. The StampSeed kit comes with everything you need, the hammer, the letter stamping tools, so that you can stamp your seed into a plate of titanium so it can survive the test of time. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. Go to stampseed.com. and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com website. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $69,180 sats per dollar, 1,446, block height 942,023. Realized monetary inflation 0.83%, market capitalization 1.38 trillion, Bitcoin versus gold market cap 4.62%, percentage issued 95.26%, decline from all-time high. We're currently sitting at a 45% dip, 45% dip. So if you're buying Bitcoin right now, you're getting it at a 45% discount. All right, let's move on to the numbers. What are we talking about today? Anyways, interesting clip. I'm so proud to be a Floridian. Desantis says the quiet part out loud. What's the deal with property taxes? They make no sense. Let's check it out.
Level ongoing taxpayer.
No, you should own your property free and clear. I think to say that someone that's been in their house for 35 years just has to keep ponying up money, that is not. You don't own your home if that's the case. So yes, of course, I'd like to see people be able to owe free and clear. And it's interesting because it's like you know, if I go to Best Buy and buy a flat screen TV and put it on the wall, I got to pay a sales tax on it, right? But I don't keep paying tax on it every year. I mean, it's just not, that's not how we do things. It's like, okay, if you're going to tax something, you tax it at the transaction and then let people actually enjoy their private property free and clear of the government. So that, I think, is the vision. That's the philosophical insight. And if you think about our founding fathers, when they were proposing the Constitution, in one of the Federalist Papers, I think it was Hamilton, he's writing about, because, you know, there was opposition to the Constitution. They were making a more powerful federal government than under the Articles of Confederation, and people worried about taxation. And they didn't have, obviously, a 16th Amendment, which eventually came on income tax. But
so he keeps going. And right now, that bill specifically in the Florida legislature, it got stuck in the House. So it passed the House. Right now, it's having trouble passing the Senate. But most importantly, what it's doing is it's moving the Overton window. And I always talk to you guys. I don't think I've said the word Overton window in a while.
Dude,
now.
Overton window has not been on the bingo card lately.
So, and this is so important because it's being discussed. Like, think about that for a second, right? And this is why Bitcoin is so powerful. The idea of Bitcoin is so powerful. I don't have the tweet posted on, with me right now, but there's this tweet going on X. There was this post going on X. It was going around yesterday, and it was essentially talking about the fact that basically this person left some money on their Robinhood account, and because he wasn't active for 3 years, basically the state of Pennsylvania was just gonna claim the funds or something like that, right? So it goes back to this idea of, look, what is property, right? Like, it is your home. If you're paying yearly tax to live in your home, is that really your home? Or as Desantis said, not Nico Moran or Optimus Fields on Simply Bitcoin, or are you really just paying rent to the government, right? And then this goes all the way back to Bitcoin, goes full circle, because everything kind of goes back to Bitcoin if you go deep enough. If you have Bitcoin in self-custody, which is why we advocate for self-custody so strongly on this channel, think about that for a second. There isn't going to be a letter from the state of Pennsylvania saying, hey, this Bitcoin wallet has been inactive for 10 years, and now the state of Pennsylvania is going to take it because it's been inactive. Or, hey, because you didn't pay your property taxes on your home, now we're going to essentially take it away from you, even though you paid for it outright. No, doesn't apply. I think they're going to try. I think property taxes on Bitcoin, I think it's an inevitability in some countries for sure, because as homes become more of a utility rather than an investment, because that's how homes are today because of fiat currencies, right? Where essentially if you have fiat, if you have an excess amount of liquidity or capital, you're forced to invest that just to maintain its purchasing power. And on a Bitcoin standard, that's not the case. Your money, not only does it maintain its purchasing power, your purchasing power actually increases over time, and you have full custody of that said asset, right? So it kind of changes the conversation a little bit. And again, it moves the balance of power from the state back to the individual, right? It's a lot easier, right, to, move your property across borders to more favorable jurisdictions with a 12-word seed phrase that you can memorize if you're in a bind than putting a house on your back. That doesn't seem very viable, does it, right? Anyways, these are very interesting times. These are monumental times. This is a pivotal shift in human history. It's extremely exciting. I think I'm calling it right now, there's going to be more change in the next 10 years than I think we've seen in the last 30 years in human history. You have AI, you have robotics, you have Bitcoin as money, you have stable coins propagating around planet Earth, right? Allowing basically the global economy to interact with the US economy. You have people being able to send money freely anywhere around the world, pennies on the dollar. Like, this is a brave new world. This is a world, I think we're heading into a moment in human history of which we've never seen before. And I think the amount of freedom that's going to come with it is something that, again, we've never seen before. There's no moment in history that you can point to and say, oh, that was very similar. No, you have self-driving cars. You have autonomous robots, right? You literally have undebasable money. You have censorship resistant money, right? This is a paradigm shift. And the question for you guys is, are you guys ready? Are you prepared for what's to come? The days of you getting a college degree, getting a job, getting a pension, those days are long gone. The robots are coming for your jobs. AI is coming for your jobs, right? That's the reality. This is the reality, ladies and gentlemen. And we have two futures ahead of us. We have Bitcoin or slavery. We have Bitcoin or central bank digital currencies. There's going to be no in between, because the powers that be are not going to want today's system to change. And the only way they can continue today's system of coercion and theft and endless wars is a world with central bank digital currencies. And the only way they can get people to go along with central bank digital currencies is with a digital ID. Because this is how it's going to work. Ready? If you don't have a digital ID, you're not going to be able to do anything. You can vote without ID, but you're not going to be able to do anything else, right? That's the reality. That's the future ahead of us, ladies and gentlemen. And this is where Bitcoin comes in. This is where Bitcoin comes in. Bitcoin is going to be the only tool that you're going to be able to use to maintain your sovereignty as an individual. That's the reality. That's the truth. That's the part that people are not talking about. We're talking about number go up. We're talking about treasury companies. Yeah, strategy. That sounds exciting. That sounds fascinating. That sounds like a great investment. But is it spot Bitcoin? Absolutely not. Is it Bitcoin in self-custody? Nope, not at all. Not even in the slightest, right? So anyways, I'm glad the Overton windows is moving. I'm super proud to be a Floridian. I'm kind of bummed out that is DeSantis's last term in office, last year in office. But yeah, it's very, very exciting stuff. Opti, I want to get your take. Then we'll move on to the next segment. We got a guest joining us today. We got Aleks Svetski, which we're really excited. That
yeah. I mean, I think the only thing to add is that because what we're seeing in Florida and also Texas to some extent, you're starting to already see, capital flee. I think I saw a metric earlier that from California, I think just itself in the last year or so, it's like 250, I think it was billion that has left the state, looking for better jurisdictions. And if Florida's able to do this, no property tax law to go through and they eliminate property tax, like Florida is like the only state to be living in unless other states follow this. And
they're going to. It's
inevitable. I know. But that's what I'm saying. It's like it's going to happen, or else every other state is just going to have not only like a brain drain, but a capital drain. And this is what you love to see. It's the one thing we've been saying for a long time, that capital goes where it's treated best. And we're seeing this happen, not just in the Bitcoin space, but also within state jurisdictions. It's like, this is beautiful to see. It really is the sovereign individual, balkanization of the U.S. It's actually kind of insane to watch.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one of the most maxi Bitcoiners on earth joining us on the show today. We have Aleks Svetski. He's going to be joining us right after the break. We're going to be right back in just a bit. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledn, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Ledn lets you unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without ever having to sell it. Since 2018, they've issued over $10 billion in loans to more than 10,000 customers worldwide. I love these guys, and not only do I have an account with them, I also have a loan. And here's what really sets them apart. There are no monthly payments, and you can pay back the loan at any time. Once you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you can have cash in your account within 24 hours. Ledn has over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or single sat of customer funds. So if you want to tap into the wealth of your Bitcoin without having to sell it, head over to learn.ledn.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY.
Welcome. Svetski, how you doing, bro? It's good to see you.
Hey, bro. It's been a while. How you doing?
Yeah, man. I think we're going to just start with that, bro. What have you been up to lately? What I actually saw a post, and I think this might be a good way to transition into Satlantis as well. But maybe we just recap where have you been, man? You're not on the internet right now. You're in real life. How's life outside of Twitter?
Amazing. It's fun.
Okay.
Good, man.
All right.
I've been messing around. I've been watching the little guy grow. Little boy. He's just turned. He'll be 7 months next week.
Congrats, bro.
Thank you. It's really
Damn,
good.
has it been 7 months since you've been on the show?
Has it been that long?
I don't know.
I don't know. Fuck.
I feel like you weren't on the show last time and you were about to have a kid.
It might have been.
Maybe.
I thought maybe. Fuck, who knows, man?
Yeah, who knows?
At this point, yeah. So, been traveling around. We went to Dubai and Bali for a little bit, which was fucking great. I've just been building. Me and a couple boys got together and we're building this really cool sauna, cold plunge, longevity recovery center here where we live. So lots of stuff, man. It's really good. You'd be amazed at how much shit you can do basically by just not being online.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you always have a bunch of projects, so it's hard to keep track of how many projects you're doing at one time. But as I mentioned, and it did pop up for a moment, for us here and for our chat, I know we are all chronically online. And I think in the last couple of weeks, hence why I started where have you been? I think we're all, I don't know, maybe getting demoralized with the internet, or we're all starting to see the problems with the internet. And now everything is maxing. And I saw one of your posts of real life maxing. So what is this and what should the people be doing?
Yeah, I came and I posted this one really quickly, but I'm posting more on Substack here and there, and I do these kind of more longer form because I enjoy writing long form, bro. You know me, I've been writing for years. I'm still a writer. That's I enjoy experimenting with ideas. And then someone told me, they're like, oh, you can post long form on Twitter now. I was like, oh, okay. So I just jumped on there really quickly and posted that. It got zero traction, obviously.
Well, that's why you're here, bro. That's why you're here. We'll help you spread the message.
No, fuck it. If people want to see anything, they can go to Substack. You know, there. Like, I do one essay a month there still. But yeah, man. The premise of the thing was again, you know me. I've always been a contrarian. That'll always be in my blood. Whenever I see the masses go anywhere, I just want to run somewhere else. And it's the same for me with Bitcoin. It's the same for me with the internet. It's the same for me with Twitter. It's the same for me with fucking general political opinions. It's the same for me with all of it, right? Whenever I see the mass adoption start to occur, I just have zero interest in being involved anymore. And that's not to say that it shouldn't happen. Like, you know, that's always part of the process. And I'm glad to see, you know, more Bitcoin adoption, more movement to right-wing political opinions, you know, all of this stuff. I'm happy to see that. But it, you know, when that happens, I'm then personally looking for what is the next frontier. Where is the few people? And to me, the new frontier is experiential. The new frontier is social networking moving back offline, right? The new frontier is catching up with people in the real world. The new frontier is, you know, not going Amish. I think this is a mistake that, you know, most people make when they sort of hear this. They're like, oh yeah, okay, so you're gonna go live off the fucking land and fuck the cows and the sheep and all that good stuff. Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you intelligently use technology. So like the place that we're building here locally, you know, we're getting some really fucking high-tech equipment where, you know, the technology is used to enhance your health, but it's like, again, in the real world, right? What we're doing with Satlantis, also very similar. It's, you know, it's purely an events app and a place to build offline communities or hybrid communities, right? So if people want to catch up in real life, this is the best place to figure that out. So yeah, man, I'm just kind of like aligning all of my life, everything I do, in such a way that I want to explore this new frontier. And I'm sure in the next 5-10 years or whatever, every motherfucker is going to start, like, you know, the trendy thing will be to be offline and every motherfucker will be back here. So then I'm sure something else will occur and then I'll be exploring that so that I can get away from the masses again.
Yeah, I totally hear that. I've noticed that in myself. I was joking, and again, Svetski, we're on YouTube, so we can't go too hard, you know, but I was joking with my friends the other day. I'm like, man, you know, all the conspiracy theories are right now. Like, what's the next wave here? You know, during the 2020 era, we were still like ahead of the curve, and now it seems like every average normie person is like a crazy conspiracy theorist. And now it's like we're coming back to, wait, maybe everything's not a conspiracy, but like, what is the next wave? And I think a lot of us that have been in Bitcoin for a while are feeling something similar. And I know personally, yes, I work online. Yes, I'm chronically on Twitter, but I need to unplug or else I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. So I'm totally on board. And I think the last time you were on, we were talking about this. But before, I do have another question I want to ask you. But before we do that, you brought up Satlantis, so I think it's a perfect segue. Let's talk about Satlantis real quick for the people that are unfamiliar with what you're building, you know, where they can find it and all that good stuff. And then we'll flush out a little more of the conversation. Just me wanting to pick your brain at this point.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, you guys have seen the journey, right? Satlantis started as this big brain idea to like connect Bitcoiners with sovereign individuals, this, that, and, you know, all through like a social network. You know, in the end, I realized that was too complicated, and it was trying to bootstrap a network from scratch is, you know, very, very hard to do. So we simplified the product. Simple as that. It's basically a Luma with Bitcoin infrastructure built into it. So you know, events. Every time you spin up an event, comes with a Bitcoin wallet. Also has Stripe integration, so you can accept Bitcoin and Stripe payments. You can run paid events, free events, meetups. You can build a community out. In the next month or two, we'll introduce a community layer where you can have memberships, right? So you could host a run club, you could do a women's club, an entrepreneurs club, you know, local Bitcoin club, whatever, and you can have memberships associated to it as well. So it's really like designed for connecting people in real life, right? Because that's where I think the social networking is moving. You know, like there was a time when social networking was done offline, then it became online, then social networking became social media, which I think we've discussed before, and now social networking is kind of coming full circle to become an offline phenomenon again. And I really think what people are going to do is they're going to form these offline clubs, right? And some of them will be very informal. They're not going to need a platform to run it, but some of them are going to be more formalized, and they're going to be probably run like businesses. There's an entrepreneurs club or a founders club that I'm a part of in Bali, actually, because I'm going to be going to Bali more often now, and it's basically it's very gated, and what I mean by that is like they limit it. It's very small. You have to have either run a business for a certain amount of time, had an exit, generate a certain amount of revenue, etc. And there's kind of like 40, 50 members in that club now, and it's really high quality contacts. And for me, that's really interesting now. I get to meet these people in real life, dinners, compounds, they run retreats. They run sort of like 20, 30 events a month. So we're building this platform for someone like that to manage the communities, the events, the calendars, and all of that sort of stuff in one place. So, for the context of Bitcoiners, we have finally, everyone sort of in Bitcoin, it's funny, they complain about meetup.com is shit, hate paying the membership fee for meetup.com, it sucks and this and that, but there's no alternative. Luma came around as a good alternative, but for those who don't know, it's like a Solana bro thing. Solana funded it, or Ethereum funded it, one of those guys. I think it's Solana that funded it. So we just built basically a Bitcoin equivalent. It's got all the feature set that you'd find in Luma, but you have Bitcoin payments, you can do Bitcoin donations, you can send Bitcoin from the event to the attendees. So we've seen people basically run underground poker games, basically, where the buy-in is a ticket, and the winner of the game gets paid out by the event. So you can do all sorts of interesting stuff on it. That's what we are. It's an events app with a calendar feature and a community feature coming soon, with Bitcoin built into its DNA.
Got it. Love it. I'm familiar with it, but for the audience, you haven't been on in a while. You're mentioning the internet, how it's personally kind of, I don't know, I guess rubbing you wrong. But one of the things that I've noticed recently, at least, I don't know how, was this post like the first time you've been on Twitter in a little while?
Yeah. I mean, literally logged in, post, logged out.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to ask because I remember you were working on, the Satoshi AI. I forget what you named it. Yeah, Spirit of Satoshi, exactly. But one of the things that I've kind of noticed recently on Twitter is not so much the bots, but now it just seems like everything is AI, and it's like everything's AI slop. And so it really leads into the idea, and I don't remember if we talked about this in the past, but like, are we currently living through the dead internet theory, but it just isn't happening how we thought it was? It's just like AI, everything's AI now. And the only way to really, as you said, LifeMax is doing exactly that, going back into real life, having real conversations with people, kind of using Twitter as a tool and not necessarily as this, the only way that you're able to communicate with people like most of us did for a long time. It feels like it truly is a new era in social media. It's, I don't know. It really feels like we're living the dead internet theory. What's your thoughts on this? I know you're not on the internet as much or on Twitter as much anymore, so maybe you don't have a full breakdown of that or a personal experience of it, but
no,
it feels like it's over.
Yeah, I'm seeing it from sort of like from afar, which is I get this comment from a lot of people. They're like, man, I'm fucking done. Oh, really? You're off the internet? Holy shit. Yeah, it's fucking shit over here. There's people everywhere. Sorry, it's bots everywhere. And it's like, I'm told everything is AI, right? I think it's kind of ironic. So I don't think anyone really anticipated the sort of the ramifications of the rise of language models, right? Because like the internet is a communication medium where you're basically typing stuff, right? And if you can create these, these technologies effectively that can write for you, or that can, emulate human speech, you kind of turn the internet into a domain for them to operate. Now, when you also layer in the idea that they can understand context and they can communicate back and forth, you end up getting a kind of like a speed and digestion problem, right? The internet is becoming too fast for human beings. You and I can't process the amount of stuff that is on the internet, right? And this is, I think we spoke about this last time. It's one of the reasons why I got off was the pace of hysteria had increased to such a degree that, you know, everything mattered, so nothing mattered, right? And that was like the last straw for me, you know, around the whole Irina getting stabbed and all this kind of thing, right? So, you know, I kind of came to this conclusion, which is that the only way to play this game is to either go even more extreme to get attention, or to not play, right? And I chose the not play option. For me in particular, you know, for other people, you know, the answer might be different. So when you've got that situation, what ends up happening is that, you know, the trend kind of becomes more and more towards, in order for you, Opti, to digest the internet, you're probably going to need some sort of AI assistant to kind of digest and summarize and figure it out, and, you know, kind of give you an end result that you can more easily understand, because it's impossible for you to take in everything, right? And you kind of see where that leads. If you do that, then other people do that and everything. Basically, the internet becomes the place for AIs to communicate and bots to communicate, right? And social media kind of becomes a broadcast medium. It doesn't become a connection medium anymore, right? And that was already happening, right? So social media, like, again, you think about it, social networking was a place to connect. Social media was a place to consume, right? So now the funny thing is, social media is now like being accelerated to the, you know, by AI, to the point that, you know, people are just sort of checking out, because they're like, okay, I can't consume from a fire hose, so I need something to consume for me and then kind of drip feed me on the other end. So you get this weird situation where you know, everything on the internet basically becomes the domain of AI. So where does that leave humans? You know, what do we do? Or at least the humans that don't want to spend their life scrolling and just consuming. And to me, you know, the only real answer is, you know, offline, or some sort of hybrid version where, you know, they have their assistant condense things or summarize things and give you something, etc. Or maybe there's like, you know, really tighter groups online where people still do communicate, where, you know, there's like some sort of web of trust or verification that, you know, I know you, you know me, you know, Nico, etc. And, you know, there's like a more like gated online experiences, as opposed to these open public squares where anyone or anything can join. So it's a very interesting thing. So I don't know if it's, as you said, it's not the dead internet theory as we imagined. In fact, it's a very live internet, but it's what I would call it is like the soulless internet, because, you know, you need souls for the internet to have a soul, right? And when the souls leave and you have a bunch of AIs there, the internet may be alive, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels fake, basically. It's basically, we're in the, I'm going to tag this, we're in the Beyond Meat era of the internet.
Yeah, that feels right. All right, wait, before I hit I'm going to hit an ad break and we'll continue the convo, Svetski. But since we're talking about AI, and you were, in my opinion, pretty early on the AI wave trying to build Spirit of Satoshi, we are seeing like an AI, I don't know if we could say necessarily it's a bubble, a hype bubble right now, but it's hard to really grasp where AI is right now because of the stock valuations. You know, some people are like, we're already at AGI. I kind of look at AI usually like a glorified search function. Like, that's kind of how I view it. I'm like, it's not that crazy. I have friends who are like, dude, it's going to take over everything. You know, nothing's ever going to be the same. So what is your view currently? Have you been following along on the AI as you've been in the real world? Like, what's your view of where we currently are with AI? You know, how fast is this coming? You know, what should people be watching in terms of just AI and what it means for their lives?
Yeah, Yeah, I've missed a lot, honestly. I didn't even know about the OpenClaw stuff until about like a month or so in, and then I got a summary of it. To be quite honest, I personally use ChatGPT for research and for just basically answering stupid shit like, hey, we're moving house at the moment and we need to get a fridge. So instead of me sitting there scouring the internet, I just tell ChatGPT to find me some options, give it the parameters, and it does that, right? Or if I need to travel somewhere that I haven't been, hey, where's the best spots, etc. Right? So like I use it kind of as a dumb slave, and it's good for that. So if an example with the OpenClaw thing, I was like, okay, I missed this whole OpenClaw thing. Please explain it to me. And then I got it to explain it to me from different angles, and I kind of got my head around what this stuff is. Does this mean AGI? I doubt it. Does it mean the world's going to be taken over? Yada yada yada. I don't think so. I just think what happens is what we just said earlier is the cyberspace or the internet where we've been communicating for the last 20 years, I think becomes saturated to such a degree that it's very, very hard to communicate outside of gated spaces. So what'll happen is social media, which is really what the internet's become now. Like, how many sites do people visit on the internet now? ChatGPT, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube,
Twitter.
That's it. So the internet is basically 6 websites now, and Amazon 7.
Yeah, and Amazon, exactly.
Yeah. So that's it, right? So what does that mean? I guess it just means it's like all of that stuff just becomes hyper efficient, and AI does its thing. I don't know. I don't have a good answer, so I don't know what it means. And quite honestly, I don't fucking care.
The classic Svetski line, I just don't care. That's always a good soundbite from Svetski. All right, let me play one quick commercial break. And I you've been around a long time. As an objective observer of where we are now, because I think you're offline, I want to just personally ask you some questions of where you think Bitcoin is and maybe society is at large. So let me play this last short commercial break, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Let's go.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com.
All right, bro. Oh, dude, my the software is acting all crazy today. Anyways, I think I want to start. Let's start with Bitcoin, because I know our audience is always like, when we get into different conversations outside of Bitcoin, they're like, I thought this is a Bitcoin show. Why are you guys talking about AI and every other thing? It's because there's more things to talk about than Bitcoin. But let's start with Bitcoin. I know you've been offline. I'm sure you're watching some of the things happening in Bitcoin. Wall Street's coming into Bitcoin. They're Saylor scooping up all the Bitcoin. We have Washington, D.C., the Trump's embracing Bitcoin. As a hardcore Bitcoiner, as probably one of the most hardcore Bitcoiners I know, what is your general take right now of where Bitcoin currently is in the overall zeitgeist of the world, and maybe what your personal feelings are about where Bitcoin is headed and what direction it's headed towards?
Yeah, man. The adoption curve.
Yeah.
What is the first one called? They're not early adopters. They're like
like early innovators.
Yeah, innovators or whatever.
The
right?
innovators. I think it's early innovators.
Yeah. So I think we finally sort of nearing the end of the early adopter phase, perhaps somewhere around there. And not to blow smoke up my ass, but I kind of consider myself a little bit more on the innovator side, right? So what ends up happening, if you look at this kind of bell curve, is that as each new era comes into any technology, any movement, any political idea, whatever, right? the group beforehand starts to get interested in something else, right? Where there's very few people, or there's less people, there's more people like them, right? So, and each group, there's a bit of overlap, right? So when you have the visionary stage or the innovator stage, it bleeds into the early adopter stage for quite a while, until the visionary innovators want to go and do something else, and then you sort of have just early adopters. And then, from early adopters, you start to kind of bleed into early majority. But I think that's where the chasm is, right? So it's got to kind of leap to the early majority. And I don't think Bitcoin's made that leap yet. But I think we're certainly entering the phase of Bitcoin's life cycle where it's in the, squarely in the early adopter phase, where the visionaries are either finding other stuff to be interested in, or they're at each other's throats arguing about whatever the fuck the philosophy of Bitcoin is supposed to be, right? For me, I guess I will always have a special place for Bitcoin. It's the best money, all of that sort of thing. We kind of already hashed all of this thing out. But something, I guess, has changed for me in the last 6 to 12 months, in the sense that, I thought early on, and if you look at my early writing, I thought I'd never get bored of Bitcoin, or that I'd never reach the bottom of the rabbit hole, right? Like there was that whole meme, right? Like the Bitcoin rabbit hole is never ending. But I genuinely think I did. Like, I don't find myself interested. Like, I don't think I could ever listen to another Bitcoin podcast again, or read another Bitcoin article. Honestly, like, tell me, what the fuck am I going to learn at this point?
Bro, I mean, first of all, how you doing, sexy?
Wait, did you say sexy? Dude, pause.
I haven't seen this man in a while, bro. This is how we communicate.
Hey, yo, pause.
But I think after, Svetski, you've been at this for a while. For me, it's been a decade, bro. I think you get to a point where you've heard every single argument. You've heard every single case. Obviously, if you're still in it in the early years, that's really where you hyper obsess with Bitcoin content, and you try to watch as much as you can. I remember in the early days, for me, I was watching every single Andreas Antonopoulos lecture, like over and over and over and over again. And I was like, this is the craziest stuff ever. But then you get to a point where, again, you've heard every single argument there is to be made. And what we were talking about in the beginning part of the show, Svetski, I was like, look, like, in terms of where Bitcoin is in its life cycle, it's interesting because Saylor is he's essentially doing what the rest of us have done, which is you just go all in. You end up going all in. You make that bet in your life, right? You go through some pain in the early years, and then you become vindicated. And I think Saylor's doing that, and he's taking traditional finance with him. And then by doing so, by being vindicated kind of in the traditional financial world, I think that's just going to create a giant stamp of approval, and it's just going to, force other companies just to kind of follow in his footsteps to remain competitive. That's where I see Bitcoin as of late. But obviously, the kind of cypherpunk type of culture that we had in the very early days, I do agree with you in the sense that a lot of that has gone, it's dissipated in a way. Right. Bitcoin isn't this, this crazy, it still is fundamentally at its core, but it's not perceived as such by the market. Right. I think we've reached a point where the early adopter, the early majority specifically, don't really care about, the things that we've talked about, your writings, for example, like the philosophical component of Bitcoin. They're more so like, okay, how do I integrate this into my life with the least amount of friction so I can benefit from it, right? And I remember I was talking to someone about Bitcoin. I think it was a couple of years ago, and I start hitting him with like, you know, Bitcoin does this, Bitcoin does that, and I never forget how the way he phrased it to me. He was like, Nico, I understand the revolutionary aspect, but let's talk about it from an investing perspective. I think that's where we are right now in Bitcoin's life cycle. We're at a point where the early majority are just like, okay, listen, I understand this is good money. How do I adopt it with the least amount of friction, with the least amount of headache? You know, I might not be as hardcore as you. I do want to benefit from it. And I think Wall Street falls into that camp as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% correct. So I guess you have a situation here, which is the stuff that people like you or me, etc., sort of our vision, the visionaries are interested in. We kind of have heard it all before, and then the new stuff that's coming out is not so interesting to us, right? So we kind of like mentally checked out. And, you know, we're probably in different situations because, you know, you have a business and a show to run, whereas me, you know, I don't have that burden, so I can kind of let go of that, right? And then for the new people coming in, if, you know, they're likely just not fucking interested in rise of the individual and fall of the state and all the other shit that I used to write, right? For them, they're interested in Saylor buying some stuff, saying whatever he says on CNN or the Trump brothers or whatever the fucking case is, and, you know, getting an opportunity to come into this thing, which has been validated to some degree because it's been spoken of by people they trust in the public. You know, one of the things I do like about, you know, that will always remain special about Bitcoin to me, though, and I'll just say this here, is that Bitcoin can still be whatever it is that you want it to be, whether you're in the visionary camp, in the early adopter camp, in the early majority camp, etc., right? So for me, I will probably never use Bitcoin like someone from the early majority or the early, from the early adopter, early majority phase, right? I will use it like the visionaries used it, you know, like I will do multi-sig and PSBTs and all of the more complicated stuff because I still find that very, very cool. I still find that very interesting. You know, my mom, she's never going to do that. She's going to buy on the exchange. And then when the time comes, you know, at a particular price, when she wants to buy a house, she's going to sell it on the exchange and she's going to buy a house, right? She doesn't care. But for me, the idea of like creating this whole schema that, you know, my son and my children in the future will be able to unlock because they did certain things, like, you know, that to me, I still find very, very cool. And that's, I think, what's fundamentally special about Bitcoin, which is why it'll always be super, super interesting to me. But beyond that, to the earlier point, it's like I'm no longer interested in listening to what the current conversation is because the current conversation is no longer relevant to me. It is relevant to a new market because this thing is evolving. And I don't resent Bitcoin for that. You know, a lot of people say, oh yeah, Bitcoin's dead because of this. I think those people are morons. Bitcoin is not dead. Bitcoin is more alive than it's ever been. It's just going through puberty, basically. It's becoming something else. But it still holds the same essence.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It really is. That's the way that you described it. It's growing up. The core is still the same, but and the core, like the early adopters are still going to be using it the way they're going to be running nodes because again, it's just native to us in that way. But the vast majority of people, and this is perhaps, I think, where a lot of people missed it, or perhaps a lot of early Bitcoiners, they didn't perceive it as such. I think a lot of early Bitcoiners, Svetski, like we projected onto everybody what we were ourselves without realizing the fact that the majority of people they're just not built that way, right? Yeah. Like, you know, they're watching sports ball, they're interested in this, they're interested in what's on TV. They're not really interested in the freedom aspect of it. They're not interested in the sovereignty aspect of it. And I think a lot of the early Bitcoiners, we underestimated the fact that most people didn't think or were never going to think the way we thought.
Correct. Yeah, this is sort of the fallacy of the what do you call it? The idealist, right? We're all idealists, and we thought we could make everyone else idealist. And you can't train someone to be an idealist. You either are or you aren't, right? This comes back to a conversation we've had how many times about nature and nurture, right? We thought we could nurture everyone into understanding Bitcoin, but you can't. Like Bitcoin attracts a certain type of person, and this actually comes back to the to the book that I wrote, right? Bushido Bitcoin. What was my realization in Bushido? It was that Bitcoin doesn't change you. It gives the people who already have the ability to understand it, it gives them a mechanism to reinforce the better parts of themselves, right? So if you were already a degen, you most likely got into Bitcoin, then you got into Ethereum, then you got into shitcoins, then you got into gambling, and then you became more of a degen, right? So Bitcoin accelerated your degeneratism, right? But if you had a particular nature around, virtues and values and honesty and integrity and all this sort of stuff, then Bitcoin amplified that. And that's all it did. That was my big finding. And that was the big fallacy, I think, amongst all Bitcoiners back in the day, which was Bitcoin fixes you, or Bitcoin fixes this, Bitcoin changes you. Turned out, no, it doesn't. Bitcoin just amplifies who you are. And that was sort of a dirty little secret. That was kind of the last big probably input that I had in the Bitcoin sphere before I became a pariah and everyone started hating me. It was, because I sort of got out and said that. I was like, Bitcoin doesn't fix anything. Bitcoin just amplifies who you actually are. And a bunch of people got butthurt over that.
And it's 100%. It's 100% true. But it's interesting, man. It's interesting because, in a way, it's kind of like, Svetski. I don't think we realized how good the good old days were, right? I don't think we realized how fun those times. It's like we thought those days were going to go on forever.
We thought they were going to expand forever.
We thought they were going to go on forever, but in reality, it was a moment in time that was never going to. It was a moment in time that was never going to happen again. That's not to say, for anyone who's listening, that's not to say, Bitcoin still has an incredible future ahead of it. And, it's going to fundamentally change the world 100%, especially the people that are listening to the show. You guys are listening to the show and you guys do appreciate self-custody. You guys do appreciate sovereignty 100%. But, what Svetski and I are talking about is like, the reality is that most people, I would say, the reality is that they just don't care about that. They care about convenience over everything. I think that's the lesson that I think we've learned over the last 5 years or so. So, anyways, man,
dude, we're all such boomers.
Yeah, I guess we're just
the good old days,
man.
Seriously,
we're Bitcoin boomers. We're Bitcoin boomers. Anyways, Svetski, is great to see you guys.
Wait, Svetski, you want to plug anything else before we wrap up today's show? Any of your other projects? I know you're always working on stuff. If you want the audience to check it out, let's do it right now.
Not necessarily. I mean, if anyone here is a part of a Bitcoin meetup or a part of a Bitcoin community or running one, like, get off Luma, get off Meetup. That's all I'm going to say. Just go and try the damn app and see how you like it. I promise you'll be blown away. It's really good. And it's a proper events app. We're different for those thinking in their mind now. It's like, oh, what about Orange Pill app or Club Orange? We're different. Club Orange is a club with a light events feature. We're a events platform. It's kind of the other way around. So we're actually going to do some stuff with Club Orange where they can import our events into their application. So anyway, go have a try of that. The last thing I will say is I've been toying with the idea of writing another Bitcoin essay, maybe my first one in a couple of years, which is a evolution on one that I wrote in 2023, I think, called Three Generations Theory. And it's just sort of an idea I've been toying with, which is related to our conversation here, is as Bitcoin evolves, it goes through different generation-based evolutions. And I'm not talking fourth turning crap here. I'm talking more like generation 1 of Bitcoin was kind of the infection stage where, people like us who were around before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin, we kind of have 1 foot in Bitcoin, 1 foot out. And by definition, we perceive Bitcoin in relation to what existed before. And at the same time, what that does is it creates the conditions for the kind of businesses and operations that are about the nexus between Bitcoin and what came before. So therefore you see miners, wallets, exchanges, treasury companies, etc. But generation 2 will be led by the people who were born after Bitcoin was launched. So call it 2010 to 2030, right? So we're kind of getting close now to generation 2. We're, a couple of years away. And, those are going to be the kids who they're going to come of age. They'll be 20, 21 years old, etc. And they're going to perceive Bitcoin very differently to us because they grew up with it. And they're going to look at it as a part of the stack. And, this is sort of where Bitcoin reaches symbiosis stage. It's gone beyond infection. It's symbiotic with the environment, with the energy infrastructure, with the technology infrastructure, with the monetary infrastructure, with the financial infrastructure, all that sort of stuff. And it is used and perceived very differently than what our generation used it for. And they'll carry it for the next 20 years, and you'll see the rise of different products and services that just have money, not payments, but money baked into the product. And then that'll sort of run 20 years, and then their children will grow up, and that'll be the third generation, and you'll sort of see the rise of the sort of the mass adoption or late adopter stage, right? And I think the sort of this first generation was visionaries and early adopters. So we probably have another couple of years of early adopters, and then we're going to cross the chasm. And I think 2030 onwards is the early majority stage, which will run for 20 years. And then the next 20 years will be the late majority. That's when we reach quote unquote mass adoption, where, Bitcoin becomes part of the societal infrastructure. So anyway, I think I might elaborate on this. So if anyone wants to read any of that, that'll be on my Substack.
Hell yeah.
Next couple months.
I always loved your writing, Svetski, and I'm looking forward to to reading that when that comes out. I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about it. Anyways, guys, go check out Satlantis.io. It's really, really cool. Again, it's built for Bitcoiners, people that think like Bitcoiners. Also, Svetski's a dear friend. We've known each other for years now at this point. Svetski's still around, guys. He's just checked out a little bit. I think it's the natural course. It's a natural evolution.
Dude, we'd be checked out if we didn't have this show.
Yeah, probably. We'd be. You see that sunset behind us? Yeah, it's, we're kind of, anyways, guys, if you guys enjoyed the show, oh wait, no, I have to give a shout out to our sponsor. I forgot about that. Guys, if you want to go to the Bitcoin conference in Vegas, we have a discount for you. It's going to be the largest Bitcoin conference in the world. Bitcoin 2026, April 27th through the 29th. Simply Bitcoin will be there. I hope to see you guys in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Venetian Hotel. Again, Bitcoin 2026. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off your tickets. Anyways, guys, love you all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.